Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today I want to talk about Jamal Bryant. You know, he's a famous pastor of a mega church here in Baltimore. He's been in the news lately because of a sermon that he gave, and I think it was this past Sunday. And in his sermon, he quoted Chris Brown, the singer. And he closed his sermon by saying, "These hoes ain't loyal." And this has generated a whole lot of controversy. A lot of people have been talking about this issue. And I just wanted to share my thoughts about the whole situation. You know, this man wasn't speaking on a street corner. He wasn't speaking in a locker room. He wasn't speaking at the barber shop. He was speaking in God's house when he said, "These hoes ain't loyal." I don't understand how anyone could support that kind of behavior coming from a pastor. I mean, I understand that reverends and pastors are normal people, but we expect more from our pastors. You know, we expect more from religious leaders and leaders in general, for that matter. And this man is a spiritual leader. You know, he says that he's inspired by God to spread his word. My question is, would Jesus talk like that? Would Jesus use that kind of language in a holy place? And the answer has to be no. I mean, anyone with any basic understanding of, you know, the Bible, of Christ, you know, they would know that that kind of speech is not appropriate for God's house. It's inappropriate, and there's no excuse for it. You know, there used to be a time when pastors had courage. There was a time when pastors spoke out. You know, pastors weren't trying to be cool. They weren't trying to fit in. They weren't trying to emulate the entertainers. They were speaking out. I remember in the 90s, this pastor from Harlem, I think his name is Calvin Butts. You know, he's a pastor of a famous church in Harlem. He, along with other activists, stood up against the music industry and its promotion of misogyny. They stood up against that nonsense. They stood up against the negativity in the music that celebrated violence, the music that celebrated the degradation of black women. They stood up against that music. They stood up against it. But nowadays, these pastors, instead of standing up against the nonsense, they participate in it. Instead of standing up against the entertainers that poison the minds of our youth, these pastors imitate them. You know, they use the same language as these rappers and singers. And it's important to understand what kind of song we are talking about here. This is a song that degrades women in general and black women in particular. This song features that rapper Lil Wayne, you know, who's notorious for his misogyny and his support of violence and drug use. The song features Chris Brown, a man who has, you know, been convicted of battery, you know, of beating a woman beater. And it features some other rap artists. The last thing that our churches, you know, that the churches need is more misogyny. And, you know, I'm not a Christian, but I am concerned about the direction of the church. You know, I'm concerned about any institution that influences our people. And, you know, frankly, I think it's a disgrace that this guy would use this language. that he would essentially degrade African American women. And I know that he will say, well, I'm not talking about all African American women. I'm talking about loose women and all that stuff. But we all know that that term hoe is basically used to put down women. And that's how the word is used in that song by Chris Brown entitled Loyal. And in the description box of this video, I will include a link to Chris Brown's song so you can hear this song in its entirety and understand exactly where these lyrics come from. I mean, how can a pastor, a man who's supposed to be about righteousness, and dignity, support this, this type of music, support and co-sign onto this music, and the thing that's even more shocking is that so many women in his congregation were all excited and exuberant when they heard him make those statements, when they heard him quote those passages. I mean, the church is in large part dependent on black women. Black women make up the majority of these congregations. And I don't understand why, they would accept this kind of language and this kind of behavior from a pastor. Now, I'm not going to go completely off on the pastor, Jamal Bryant, because I know that he does great works in the community. He has a long history of serving the community. He's not a perfect man, but he does have that history. So I'm not going to attack him. I'm just going to question him. And that's the purpose of this video. If I was going to attack him, it would be on my other channel. But it's on this channel, New Possibilities. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. He made valid points in his sermon about the makeup of the church, about the fact that it's majority women, and, he talked about, the large percentage of, homosexual men in the church, and unlike a lot of people, I don't have any objection to those statements with respect to the, the homosexuals in the church, or, just about the makeup of the church, because a lot of his statements were factual, in that regard. But I do have a problem with him placing the blame on family problems and stuff like that on the women. I have a problem with someone talking about how basically putting the weight of loyalty on the backs of women, when both, the man and the woman are responsible for infidelity. That the woman shouldn't bear, most of the burden of that moral responsibility. So, I just wanted to share those thoughts with you. Feel free to comment, rate, and subscribe. Peace.